Good afternoon, Brian Johnstone.
Good afternoon, Beth.
And it's a pleasure to have you here. And if I were to go through your CV, I think we would take up the whole filming time. So
don't.
Very thinly, I'm not going to do it, but I'm aware you have, what, 6 published collections?
Yes, 3 full collections, 3 pamphlets.
And some of which are translated into I don't know how many languages.
Well, one of the pamphlets is in Italian, so it's Italian-English.
Fantastic.
But a lot of stuff's been translated at various overseas festivals and things.
And of course, amongst your many other roles, you coined this wonderful term. You're a sort of serial founder, not least of which, of course, is Stanza, which still thrives beyond anybody's hopes. I think it's just
amazing.
Extraordinary.
Yeah. Thanks to Eleanor, our wonderful director.
Yes, but thanks to you too, and to Anna, and to everyone. And we'll come back to Stanza. I think what I want to look at just now, though, is your own work. And maybe quite soon you'll give us a little flavour of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something here, I think. When I think about your work, I think about the past being omnipresent in your work in a very healthy and wonderful way. And sometimes it's a very highly personal past, and sometimes it taps into a collective memory. But this history is really huge in your work.
It's an obsession of mine, there's no point in saying otherwise. I've always been a lover of history. It's possibly the first reading that I ever did as a pretty young child. It was historical stuff. The first time I ever got the belt at school was for reading a history book. The mistake I made was reading it during an arithmetic lesson. So the pain didn't put me off. The pain possibly reinforced the love of history. As a child I wanted to be an archaeologist. My hero was Mortimer Wheeler. And I didn't obviously become an archaeologist. I do have friends who became archaeologists, but archaeology, history, the past, they've always been very, very much something that I'm interested in. It's not nostalgia. I think nostalgia in some ways has kind of been debased through its understanding, the way the term's used nowadays. It actually comes from, I think it's nostalgia, pain and loss. It's not really about the sort of sentimental, wishy-washy affection for the past that tends to get tied up with now. I prefer terms like the Portuguese term saudade, and the Spanish term duende, that sort of soulful empathy and longing for the past. But it's not longing to live in the past, it's longing to understand the lives of the people that lived in the past, and understand the conditions that they put up with to try and be those people.
So sort of living with the past,
I think of it in those terms, yes. I mean, and the immense amount of loss that's part of the past. We only have a fragment. The further back you go, the less you have, obviously. But even recent history, we only have fragments of what's there. We can never fully understand, but I try in my writing to get very much inside that. I'll give you a little poem here, a poem just called History, which is really, it's almost a throwaway poem, but it's what I want to say about the past, really, in terms of that aspect of loss. History. It's paper still. Look, it holds its shape lying on the coals, holds the print red, not a moment back on white, now black on grey, curling in the hearth. It's lighter now. The updraft picks at edges, slowly crumbling into ash, picks at all the history we toss as trivial to fires. Look, we're courting dust. Our hands will cast away perhaps 1,000 words, drop them all as easily as shedding skin.
Thank you, Brian. That's very beautiful, and that does. And I'm actually thinking about quite a few of your poems. I'm also thinking about one in the previous collection, about Gable Ends.
Oh yes.
And again, it has that feeling, and I think it's very interesting what you were saying about wanting to be an archaeologist. Sorry, and because I feel it is that kind of excavation that you are doing with words in your poetry, that it's quite a similar thing.
Well, I try to, and it's not, I mean, one thing that I do latch onto a great deal in what I write is objects, the remains of the past, as I was trying to evoke in just that simple crumpled bit of paper there, but objects which can say so much about the past, connect you directly with them, you know, they've been handled by people through generations. I've got this phrase which I use rather glibly, the patina of the past, or the patina of possession. They're really the same thing. The way that you can inherit and or just view objects which have been handled by people generations back. I remember years ago in Crete, a place I love, going to an old site on the south coast which still had a few mosaics and things. They were really interesting, but lying around all over the place there were broken roof tiles. I was rooting about in those and picked up just a fragment of roof tile, but in that clay was a thumbprint, just the thumbprint of a person 4,000 years ago who made that roof tile. That's the sort of thing
That's exactly
that matters to me here.
Yes, I can see that. Which is, and it's extraordinary because I mean you're doing that, as I say, in that collective memory with things that hopefully that you are igniting in other people too. But you're also looking at things in your own past, and you're doing it. We are most familiar with how you're doing it through poetry. But I know you have a memoir coming out with Sarah.
That's coming out early next year, yes.
So that must have been a very different discipline, how you handled that. I can remember you putting up on Facebook that you're writing prose at the time, flagging it up.
It's the first lengthy piece of prose I've ever published. I published a few short stories when I was interested in writing short stories 15 or so years back, but I've never published a lengthy bit of prose. In fact, I've never written a lengthy bit of prose. This is the first extended piece of prose I've ever written. But don't get too excited, it has poems in it.
Oh, good.
Every chapter has a poem in
So
it.
you've married the two.
Yeah,
That's
there's
marvellous.
one or two from my three main collections, but most of it is new poetry that's not been published anywhere before.
Yeah.
So I could give you one of those if you'd be interested. A
certainly
sneak
would.
preview.
Yes, please.
Right, okay.
An exclusive.
An exclusive. Let's see what we have. Not to that one. Right. This the memoir is very family orientated. I'm not going to say too much about it. It's about members of my family and about unknown members of my family. Thinking back to Donald Rumsfeld here, the unknown knowns and the known unknowns, but it's about revelations that came after the death of each parent. And a lot of the book is about my mother, who's a very central figure in the whole memoir. This is a little poem that I'm trying to evoke my mother again through an object, a cigarette case. It's just called Case. A gilded steel cigarette case, bright years later like the burnished square on the lid where someone could have etched your name. Snap it open and the spring is still keen, fresh as a clicked finger. The bands of elastic, though sagging with age, each overburdened by use. Even now the faint whiff of tobacco lingers inside a space as empty as the lack of employ, lack of consumer. Your fingers flickered here. Enough room for a pack of Kensitas, coupons religiously saved, to tuck below a band. Slip the case into a clutch bag, you're ready for a do. Later, depleted, it would return. A few offered round the company, others elegantly inhaled where all of you were sitting at a table by a bar. At the end of another evening out, you're gone, but the print of your grip in lipstick's red clings to the tip of a filter just stubbed out.
Terrible moving. And when you have to work with poetry and you're telling it slant in that way, when you're looking at these highly personal, highly close things, it must be a very different thing to do that in prose. How did that feel?
It's the way I've used the poems in the book is they're almost like a storyboard. This didn't occur to me right away when I started writing. I planned the whole book out ages ago around the narrative that I was wanting to tell, and it was only when I decided I would include some poems in it, and I'd written quite a few of these poems already, family poems, which hadn't appeared in collections. I thought this was the ideal way to have them published. It was when that occurred to me that this was actually what was binding the story together, that it became easier to write the prose. I can't write poetry and prose at the same time, so when I was writing prose, I abandoned the poetry. I've just finished what I hope will be the last major edit to the memoir. That I finished that about a week and a half ago, so now I'm trying to polish up the final poems that I'm writing to actually fit into the chapters. But almost in terms of writing prose and the difference, I find that it's actually quite liberating, because instead of trying to encapsulate what you mean inside a series of images and keep it, well, you say tell it slant, almost hidden in some ways, so that it emerges to the person reading the poem or hearing the poem. It's quite liberating to be completely overt and say, this is what I mean, this is what I think, and here you are, take it or leave it. I'm nailing my colours to the mast. So I found it a liberating experience. A time-consuming experience. No doubt it takes a hell of a lot longer than writing poems. So I suspect this may be my only major prose work, but we shall see.
No, that's absolutely fascinating, and it's very interesting how that will be received as well, because by the people affected by it, obviously the principal.
Well, they're all dead.
So you're okay with that,
Yes.
because that's often the bit that you can tuck into the slant, or the hidden metaphor of a poem. You can often do that, and as you say, you're offering this overtly now, and that's quite a different place to be. And at times that might feel quite vulnerable, but as you say, they're all dead, so that's perhaps in the circle.
Apart from those who've read it,
And they're fine with it.
You'll have to wait and see, because there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. Well, I hope it's interesting.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that. I'm assuming it's interesting, but it's stuff that I've told stories to friends about strange occurrences in my family for years and years and years, and hopefully I won't have to do this anymore, because it will all be in the book.
It'd be wonderful. I know I've had slight hints of it. I remember you were reading at the Rep. Now you were with a ukulele player.
That's
and
right,
I remember,
Dave Burnett, yeah.
Yes, and that was really wonderful. Which actually,
that's kind of what kicked off doing the memoir as well, because I did this show based around my mother's life with Dave singing songs from her life, and it sort of helped gel the ideas for the memoir.
Yeah, I have memories of a very beautiful poem at an ice rink kind of thing.
That's in my first collection, Skating on Happy Valley.
So I remember that.
That will be in the memoir as well.
Wonderful, that is great. And actually the music thing perhaps takes us naturally on to something else, because not only are you a serial founder, you're a very esteemed co-collaborator with people both in poetry discipline, but in disciplines way beyond. And yes, particularly perhaps I think about music when I think about your highly rhythmic words, and I think about you with Trio Verso and other places, and it would be very interesting to unwrap what influence you think your music has had on you.
Let me start with a poem then.
Yes, please.
And I've been a music lover from early childhood, classical music to an extent, but my main thing is jazz, and I've been into jazz since I was in my teens, when I discovered the great Miles Davis. This is a poem called Lady Day's Experience, about the jazz singer Billie Holiday, and this is about when I was about maybe 16, 17, as a teenager, not really interested in the pop music that all my contemporaries were into at the time, and wanting something more, and being round in a friend's flat, listening to Billie Holiday albums which belonged to his mother, when this happened. Lady Day's Experience. What was music to our ears, she said, was too much grief to hers. The broken voice of Lady Day's experience, leaking from the room our youth was filling with a hunger for that bit more than rock or bubblegum. We hadn't noticed as the door had opened she'd come in, weeping into one last glass of wine. The woman she still was, no way is take for granted mum, had shown us both how Billy's damaged vocal cords corralled the blues to open wounds that comfort couldn't close. An unexpected pain had seeped out of the grooves, shocked us so much that we changed the record as she asked. A woman's voice, another's bitter tears that aged us, playing cool in that suburban room, taught us so much more than the liner notes reveal.
That's beautiful. That's very, very holiday.
Well, I do that one with Gio Verso, in fact.
Yeah.
Richard, who's the sax player in the group, introduces it with a tenor solo of Billie Holiday's number Loverman. Loverman was the very first song I ever heard Billie Holiday sing on one of these LPs that I refer to in there. So it just ties the whole experience together. But I love working with musicians. I've worked, Trio Verso is my dream outfit, because as a jazz fan, to work with a wonderful sax player like Richard Ingham, a fantastic bass player like Louise Major is just a treat. But I've worked with traditional musicians. I worked with Wendy Stewart, the classic player, for quite a few years, back in the late 90s, early part of this century. I've worked with a friend who plays sort of Keith Jarrett type piano improvisations. I've even done a performance with a guy playing pipe chanter, which was interesting, shall we say. Yeah. And of course I've worked with Dave Burnett as well, as you said.
Yeah, that was a fantastic night.
It's something I love doing. Some people anyway have said that they feel that, I know Don Patterson believes this, that spoken word poetry and music should be kept apart. They just don't work together. I was actually talking to Don about this just the other night when I was hearing his band playing, and he said, well, fine for other people, but never for me. Well, it's the opposite with me. I find it really enhances what I'm trying to do, and I think what it does is allow people who maybe have that barrier to poetry, which I blame the teaching profession for.
And we can say that because we're both ex-teachers.
Exactly, I'm a former teacher. Yeah. I was in there with a chalk face, I know.
Yeah.
I know this was the case. But people are allergic to poetry. You know, the word poetry does bring down barriers. You couch it in different terms. As a musical performance, people will maybe give it more time of day. I've certainly had a lot of feedback at the end of gigs from folk who've said, well, I've never really listened to poetry before, but it works.
It's
more of it.
The gateway.
Yeah.
Why not? I'm really surprised at Don Patterson saying that, because I have attended something where he has both played and read.
Really? But did he do it together?
He did sort of 5 minutes of this and 5 minutes.
But not combined, not with the music at the same time. That's
where his problem lies, because that's interesting.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, Don did a talk at Stanza years ago about this very point, that he feels that they should be kept apart. He doesn't even like classical arrangements of verse, for example.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
I hope I'm not misquoting.
No. But it's an interesting
Sorry,
thought.
Don.
Because my thought would be that one would naturally feed the other, and as you say, it's such an interesting thing if you can get somebody who's going to be amenable to music but hasn't touched poetry since maybe every January in schools, as we know, that sometimes when poetry is produced, then if you can
out burns annually.
Absolutely, and not generally doing any favour to burns as they're doing that. If you can get them through the door and listening and thinking, actually, I can listen to this. Surely that's a good thing.
And people listen to songs. They listen to the lyrics of songs. Contemporary songwriting is something I love listening to myself.
And would you be interested in treading over to sort of a libretto or anything?
I've never done anything like that. I did write. I had a sort of Elton John Bernie talking partnership with a friend in my teenage years. We even got as far as submitting a tape to John Peel. We never got any further than that. But I did that years and years ago, and I did write a few numbers for a punk band in the late 70s. So that's it. Well, it's unlikely I'll go back to that.
I think if you can tread the dark side of prose, then surely it is a thinner barrier that would take you into a libretto. And why not?
You never know.
I don't know if you think about collaborations, again, a cross-disciplinary thing, moving to another one, I'm always delighted when I look at dry stonework and I thought, oh good, it's a Will McLean cover again,
Yes.
because I love
As
Will.
long as Will is willing to let me use his
Oh.
work, I will be using him on the cover all the time. He's my absolute favourite artist,
Yeah, just wonderful.
contemporary artist. He's the greatest poet of visual art. To
I
my
think
mind.
yep,
He genuinely is a poet.
absolutely, he truly is. So I don't know, I'm seeing a lot of these wonderful cross-pollinations and great respect, mutual respect across disciplines, which I think is an entirely positive thing. So sharing has been a huge hallmark of what you do as a poet.
I love working with all sorts of other art forms. Music's not the only one.
Yeah.
Visual art, as you're saying with Will McLean there. I've actually written a set of poems based on one of a series of drawings of Will's. We've yet to decide what to do with them. In fact, I have a letter from Will saying we must meet to discuss this, propped up on my desk at home. I haven't had time till the memoirs all sorted. But I respond a lot to visual stuff. As you know, I've written a series of poems based on different photographs. Partly that comes from the fact that before I seriously started writing, before I got back into writing, because I did write as a teenager, but before I got back into seriously writing poetry, I thought photography was where my creative urges were going to go. I did a lot of series photography in the 80s, a couple of exhibitions in the early 90s, and I still am very, very interested in photography and look at a great deal of photography, contemporary photography and older photography, but it's stuff that will spark off a lot of poems, such as
I was going to
this
say,
one.
that
Yes.
sounds like a cue for a poem.
It's a good, yeah, great segues these, isn't it?
Well planned.
So, okay. This is very much a Dundee poem, and it's based on a photograph, which is, it's not a photograph of people, it's a photograph of a series of train tickets, all punched in the small station of St Fort on the far side of the Tay, for the passengers who were on that fatal train that fell into the Tay during the Tay Bridge disaster. There's an epigraph to the poem which says, "Tickets for Dundee had been collected from passengers on the train before crossing the bridge. A photograph shows the tickets of some who lost their lives that night." And this photograph makes a beautiful visual collage of these photographs, so the beauty is very much contrasted with the horror of what you know they represent. The last train from St Fort. They have the stubs, some 6 of these, each punched a blank triangle nicked from every ticket's edge, arranged into this neat display, framed up and photographed, a wreath of non-arrival, commemorating those they dredged out of the Firth, bedraggled in their city clothes or navvy's gear, sandbanks seeping from the seams, and carted lifeless through the streets they would have stepped onto that night, but for the force and angle of the wind, and workmanship so bad it might have been deliberate neglect, or some sick joke, like that the men made later from his name damned Bouch, the bodger who had flung them from the edge of certainty, dashed Victorian assurance that their Bradshaw was reliable, the engineering sound, nothing could delay the locomotive not yet renamed the diver, as it would later be, hauled out of the deep, uncoupled from its ruined rolling stock to ride the rails another day, the monument from which it plunged unwary through the chasm of the gale, these stubs of pillars strung out across the Tay.
It's very, very moving.
And they're still there. Every time you cross the Tay Bridge, there they are.
Yes,
Just
the
below
low
it.
tide.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, it's always quite a harrowing sight. And I think this, I'm just thinking back to this sharing. Now, I wouldn't dare say which sharing you felt you were most proud of, but surely the founding of Stanza and your early involvement in Stanza must be way up there as something that you've been credited, and what that has given to the poetry community in Scotland and internationally.
Well, I'm certainly extremely pleased to have been involved in Stanza right from the start. It's kind of a dream come true, because I'd been involved in various other initiatives to get live poetry out on the scene. I was one of the people behind the start of Shore Poets in Edinburgh.
Yes.
I ran cave readings in the Pit and Ream Festival for many years. So presenting live poetry and getting the voice of the poets out there into the ether, that's what's really important to me. To my mind, that is poetry. The poetry is not the text that's written down, that's the notation. The poetry is what you hear in the air, what you hear in space. And to be able to found a festival, as I did with Anna Crowe and Gavin Bowd in 1998, to direct it for 10 years from 2000 to 2010, and to see it continue. It's approaching 20 years.
Yes.
It'll be 20 years old next year. To see it continue and to thrive under the current director, Eleanor Livingston, is just wonderful. I'm so going to pretending otherwise. It's a great buzz to go along there and connect with people. I've met so many wonderful people through the poetry world, people who've been very, very supportive to me as a poet, people whose work I really love. And to be entirely selfish about it, it's just great to be able to drive 9 miles from home and be able to hear world-class poets every year.
To do something that's every bit as gigantic as anything that might be done in London or anything, yes, and you must take a great pride in that. I would.
It has grown to be one of the major festivals. I think even in the 10 years I was directing, we definitely achieved that goal. To some extent, it was based on the earlier St Andrews Poetry Festivals. There have been poetry festivals in St Andrews since the late 60s. I was involved in the festival that Professor Nick Rowe ran in the early 90s, a committee member on that. That ran out of time because most of these things were run by academics who just didn't have the time to pursue them. So the fact that both Anna and myself were not academics gave us the time and space to promote it, and we certainly got up there into the top echelons of the British Poetry Festivals, and within my 10 years anyway, we were attracting people from all over Europe and America, and it's just grown and grown continually. Eleanor has made much more international inroads. It's delightful. I hope in another 10 years' time I'll be sitting creaking in a chair but still enjoying it.
Absolutely. I mean, I can see no reason why not. You really get that energy and that dynamic from it, it seems unstoppable. And I suppose I think about that too. I think about this tremendous energy that you have put into these things, and you're being generous and saying what it has given you back, but also, gosh, it must have taken a great deal of your time and energies.
Yes. It's probably significant. My first, as I said earlier, I came back to writing late. I'd written as a teenager and in my 20s and published a few things then. Gave it up to pursue a career as a primary school teacher and got back into it towards the end of the 80s. My first book came out in 1996. We founded Stanza in 1998. My second full collection came out in 2009. I stopped directing Stanza in 2010. You could probably work that out.
Yeah.
If I look at my files, I have files for poems on the laptop per year. There are sometimes 2 or 3 poems in a file for, say, 2004, 2005. Now there'll be files full of sort of 20, 30 poems over the year. So it took away a lot. But it was a creative process in itself. The actual putting together of the festival, the programming, the pairing up of poets, the choosing visual art to match the poets, music to match the programme. It's all creative, so that actually coming to the launch of the festival and seeing it through the 5 days was wonderfully exciting, because you were seeing something you just had in your own head or on paper turn into a real event. So in many ways similar to a poem, in that it starts out with words on the page, all cobbled together, honed, polished and so on, and eventually comes out into the air as the poem.
Is there anybody in recent years, recent stanzas, that has really, captured you, influenced you?
I don't know about influence, probably influenced to say. The poet that jumped out at me really not this year's stanza but the previous years, someone whose work I was aware of but I'd never really read and I'd certainly never heard live was Sinead Morrissey.
Yes.
I absolutely loved her reading.
Yes.
She read with Bill Manhire, another wonderful poet, but I've become a complete convinced fan of Sinead Morrissey. I've got several of her collections now, including the one she signed for me on the night. That's just symptomatic of how stanza can, although you think you're well versed in poetry, how it can present new discoveries to you.
I actually think it's something that stanza does really wonderfully. Some of these paired readings, and quite often you'll go along thinking, well, I know so-and-so's work, I don't know. And I mean, that happened to me this very year. I went along to one of the border crossings, being quite familiar with one of the poets' work, knowing nothing about the other. And the other, the wild card, if you like, was one of the high spots. And I think, isn't that one of the things that stanza does? You're going to go across, and yes, I can manage to fit in that. And you go to somebody that you know nothing about, and you come out energised by thinking, I've got to buy that collection.
Yeah.
And I just love that about stanza.
I have a minor problem with that, in that I have a shelf approximately this length full of poetry books I've bought, not just at stanza, but all sorts of poetry events I've been at over the years. I just haven't caught up on them. I worked my way through them. The most recent one I've been reading that I absolutely knocked out by is John Lendy's latest book. It's just fantastic. Golden Mean, terrific book. But other poets, Claire Askew's a poet I really admire from the young poetry scene. She brought out a fantastic new collection. And someone else I discovered through stanza in more ways than just as a poet was Fiona Benson, who was published by Cape. Fee was actually become a friend. She was actually a student volunteer when she did creative writing at St Andrews. We've kept in touch ever since, and just this year there she was back at stanza as a fully acclaimed poet, published by Cape. Fantastic publisher, one of the most reliable publishers around. And there she was reading wonderfully well.
But you know, Brian, there is one way around our sagging bookshelf problem, because I have the same problem, and it's something we discussed a few weeks ago. I remember we were talking, both of us being very into paper, very into print, have become surprised in recent years, I think, by how much we're liking what's going on online, that there's something special happening there, something also very exciting. And of course, you're very, very involved with an exciting project with Andy Jackson, Scotia Extremis, which must have thrown up some very fun and interesting things for you.
It's been a great chance to work with Andy, who's editing. I've been admiring both disconnectedly and connectedly over the past through the anthologies he's done for Red Squirrel Press and his Whaleback City with Bill Herbert. So it's great working with Andy. I'm not going to claim that I came up with this idea. The whole idea of Scotia Extremis came from Andy.
That's it, Andy's.
But it's something he's very into, pairing of poems. So you built into the anthology, the online anthology, Scotia Extremis, is a tension between two subjects, two poems, two poets, and even two photographs, because he puts photographs up. But the whole principle of this is that we've looked at the extremes of Scottish culture. Its subtitle is Poems from the Polarities of Scotland's Psyche. So we've paired up things like Celtic connections with the White Heather Club, Jenner's, the department store in Edinburgh, with the Barras in Glasgow, etc., etc. And there'll be lots more things like this. We've got Jimmy Shand paired with Jack Bruce, for example. That's coming shortly. So the whole idea is that there will be some connection between these two extremes, but they will be very much at the extremes of the subject matter that they're dealing with, and that we've commissioned two separate poets to write. Neither poet knows what they're going to be paired with, so there'll be a tension that will grow from that unfamiliarity as well. And we only reveal to them who they're being paired with, subject matter wise, when the poem's ready to be, when it's finished and ready to be posted online. But it's been great fun. I mean, I noticed you asked me, what is it revealed about Scotland's psyche? I'm not sure it's revealed anything yet, but maybe
it will.
It may well do.
But again, it has that exciting. I like this weekly. It's normally a weekly release.
Apart from
Apart
we do
from
the
that,
odd special.
you've done
now
your
and again.
specials, but
There's
then-
one coming up for the Year of Architecture, I
Right.
think, on Friday this week.
But again, you have this wonderful thing that you're releasing it and you have it through social media and so on. And once again, say you have something, was it Brian Johnstone or somebody, and you can, when you're sharing it on Facebook or something, I can tag people I know who probably don't read poetry and say, but you should read this, you know, you're a football fan. And again, maybe, I don't know, if we've all got this kind of evangelical quality, come on, read it,
Yes,
you're going
I
to
think
enjoy
so. That's
it.
part of
And I
it.
think Scotia Extremis really does that brilliantly. You can get, look, you know, here you've got something about the Barras, I don't know, Iron Brew, whatever is coming up that, come on,
Yeah.
you can pull people in.
It's a in a
Wonderful.
way, it's a sort of mini online festival.
It is.
It's so
It
many
really
different
is.
voices. I mean, we're only about a quarter of the way into it, and the range of voices we've had in terms of the styles of the poetry and so on, that's enormous already. But I do the same thing. I've been posting it on various sites and groups that I'm involved in, some political groups,
Yeah.
so that people pick up on the politics of the
Sure.
stuff. Some of the photography groups that I'm involved in, when there's particularly interesting images that go with it. So I know for a fact there are people out there reading it who will probably not be reading contemporary Scottish poetry.
Right,
I've been
exciting.
cheekily posting it in all sorts of poetry sites down south so that
Yeah.
people can see what's going on up here. Funnily enough, I've had quite a number of people saying, "Oh, I never knew that about Scotland," or "You know, I'm learning so much about popular culture in Scotland, whatever." That sort of thing that people weren't necessarily aware of. It's not polemical in any way. We're not trying to educate or be didactic at all. We're just trying to have a bit of fun with the poetry, but it's making lots of different
It's
connections.
serious and beautifully made fun, though, which is wonderful. And I think it's very interesting you're talking about your political involvement in this, but I mean, Scotland is incredibly precious to you, I mean, undoubtedly as places. So I just wondered if there was a poem, perhaps, that particularly maybe said something of that. I'm sorry, I didn't warn you on that one, it's just come up here.
That may be a tall order.
So yes, my apologies.
Nothing there. Let's see what we have. There's a possibility. I take it you can edit out these pregnant pauses.
Sorry, that really did just
No
look
problem.
How are we doing time-wise, Sharon?
That's almost 40 minutes.
Okay.
In terms of Scotland, I do love the country very much, but the point about it is it's the people, it's the past, it's everything about the place. Here's a poem, it's another object poem. It's about the tools I inherited from my father-in-law. Again, it's about this pattern of possession, so I don't know how much this fits with what we're talking about the country, but in many ways this is the country for me. The 1,000 blows. What's done to wood cannot be undone. To steel, abrasives can rub down. A whetstone can restore and could with time this edge that hasn't seen its like for years. The 1,000 blows this handle took, shivered in the splintered grain, splits so old they've taken on the patina of age, the tally of time spent over chisel, over bench, where cord was little use to bind the stock, damaged by the hefted knock, no more than accident deferred. It's held but would not do for long, this long as steel is dull, the edge unused, the rust grown slowly on the blade, the sweat that's soaked into the handle, with each blow glowing in the dim electric light that aids a rummage in the drawer, where each one of the thousands has its twin, in other blows, in other tools forgotten as the men who made them sing. Let them lie here. Goods no one will get the good of, ends as rough as hands that held them, weary with it all.
Thank you, Brian, for that. I know we're coming towards the end of this interview, And so much of what we've talked about has been in the past, but also looking to the future. I know you not only have a memoir coming out, but I think next year you have a poetry pamphlet,
There's a poetry pamphlet due towards the end of next year,
which is marvellous.
which is also music orientated. It's a sort of history of my growth through pop music. It's called Jukebox Jeopardy.
Right, that's marvellous. And I know we could have a whole other conversation about what the pamphlet does, which the larger collections do not, and that's an exciting area too. But
It's a great thing for thematics,
Isn't
and
it?
that's why I've chosen to do a pamphlet with this, because it allows me to focus just on this one series of poems.
But it sounds to me as if there has been all this huge energy that it's not diminishing any, and there's just so much potential and
Inshallah,
excitement.
it's fine.
Inshallah, indeed. Thank you, Brian. Thank
So do you want a final poem to finish off?
you. I would never say no
All
to a
right.
final poem. Thank you.
This is, I always read this at the end of everything. It's called One for the Road. The headlights beam into the dark, illuminating silence the vehicle moves into. Distant till the Dopplers pass, a fan of light that breaks upon a sky so full of stars it's nothing but the swipe of us, intruding for a moment on the pitch of night, much as a match flares till it's shaken out, or as we try to make our mark, but stumble, spill its substance, light up our surroundings only briefly, see there's nothing more than we'd steered into. Find we're fumbling for the map.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.